Good morning.
Good morning.
This is your Title I Family Engagement Budget Workshop. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you learn a lot more about budgeting to help you move forward.
On our agenda today is the Title I budget process, the 1% family engagement set aside. We'll show you how those funds are calculated, funding timeline, purchases, carry forward budgets, and then we have some reminders and upcoming events. So how do schools arrive at the Title I budget? The Title I budget is, can I stop? How do schools arrive at the Title I budget? It starts with a comprehensive needs assessment, then the school improvement plan, which leads to the Title I budget. So hopefully you're part of your school's leadership team, which sits down and completes the comprehensive needs assessment. There are a lot of questions in there. It's good for you to be on this part of the plan because there's questions in there about family engagement that you could add some good insight for, too. Once the comprehensive needs assessment is completed, then the school improvement plan is written. The school improvement plan will address the needs that were found during the assessment. So items in the school improvement plan should help address the concerns that were found in the comprehensive needs assessment. Once the plan is written, then the Title I budget can be written. The items in the budget should support the action steps that are supporting the needs in the needs assessment. You cannot have a budget if you do not have a school improvement plan or a comprehensive needs assessment. So the family engagement set aside. Our overall budget this year for Savannah-Chatham County is $13,131,534. So of that, it is required that we set aside 1% for parental involvement, which would be $131,315. Of that amount, for the district allocation for family engagement, we can take up to 10%. This year we've calculated that we just needed 9.15%, which is $12,015. What we use that money for is our items that we need for trainings, paper, the notebooks that y'all received this year to keep your documentation in, the dividers, pens, any supplies that we need for training. If we plan on doing another book study, we'll use those funds for that. But we try to take the least amount that we need so that we can push more out to the schools. So after we take away that $12,015, that leaves the school allocations with $119,300. Our APTT sites each get $5,400, and then our non-APTT sites get $3,500.
Hey, Missy, can I ask a question?
Sure, Debbie.
What's an APTT site?
It's academic parent teacher teams, and they put on events 3 times a year where parents receive information on how to work with their children at home. Because the packets that the parents receive during these meetings are pretty good sized packets with take home information, those schools need to receive additional funding that other schools don't.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Missy.
So this is our Title I grant funding order here. So budgets were due on June 28, 2019. Funds are usually released around November, December. At this point right now, we have not released funds yet, but we are waiting to hear back from the state. Right now, the state is reviewing it and making sure that everything that the schools put in their budget is allowable and that we can get those items. Usually we have carry forward funds have been released to the sites, but at this point those funds have not been released. But principals usually get those budgets in before they leave for Christmas. Of course, that will be pushed to January this year. And then carry forward funds are released around April or March of 2020. And you're wondering, what is a carry forward fund? Well, if our grant is $13 million and we only spend 11 million of it, that means that 2 million of it goes into the carry forward fund. And then that 2 million gets dispersed out to the schools depending on the student allocation. So some schools that spend all their money get a Christmas present and they get additional monies. Those schools that don't spend their money give into the pot so other schools can spend their money.
Hey, Missy, I have another question.
Sure, Debbie.
If I'm at a school and now that I have been the parent facilitator for a few months and I've thought of other things that I need, can I request to purchase some items out of carry forward budgets?
You can. You can speak to your principal. Unlike at the beginning of the year where we have that required set aside where that $3,500 must be spent on family engagement, carry forward, you're not required to have a set aside. So principals don't have to allocate funds during carry forward, but if there's items that you feel that you need, it's a good time to talk to your principal about what you need. Also, it's a good time to start making your list about what you feel you might need for next school year, because when principals start putting those budgets together in June, you'll be home because your school year will be over. So if you can get your list together in April and May and get to that to your principals would appreciate that. Have you seen your Title I school family engagement budget? I hope so, because those are the items that you can order. So hopefully your principal has shared this with you. If they haven't, reach out to your program manager and they can share your budget with you. But hopefully you have spoken to your principal about what you need and it's in your budget.
So that's the budget that was turned in back during the summer, and we don't have the money yet, but they will soon.
Correct.
Okay.
We should hopefully get that money soon, and we'll go through in a few slides how you're going to help your secretary put your purchase orders together. But those funds have not been released.
Would it help to go ahead and put those items together now so when the money is released, they're ready to spend?
It would be helpful. And when we get moving ahead in a few slides, when we talk about the requisition forms, you can help your secretary do that. So one important thing, and principals know this, we say this, I don't know how many times a year to our principals, and it's even said to us by our data analysts, if it's not in the budget, you cannot order it, which means that if you have $3,500 in your budget and you want a dollar pack of paper clips, if those paper clips are not in your budget, you cannot order the paper clips. I know it's only $1 and it seems real silly, but we have submitted to the state what you've said you needed based on your school improvement plan and comprehensive needs assessment, and that's what you are allowed to order. So how to read an account number. This may be information that you may not necessarily need moving forward, but I think it's important to share it with you just so you can see what goes on behind the scenes. So there's a fictitious account line up there. I've just kind of made up a school code. The 470 is the funding source. Anytime you see 470, it means it's Title I. 866 is the agency. And then the 1022, that's your school code. Do any of you know your school codes? 2751 is the activity code, which indicates family engagement. And then 4610 is the object code, which is supplies, and everybody has supplies in their budget. So on this slide, this is just a sample family engagement supply budget sheet here. Any items that are in supplies are items that will not last more than 1 year. So you see there you have academic pamphlets, and some of you might be thinking, why are pamphlets and supplies? But if these are pamphlets that you're giving away to parents, they will not last more than a year because you're giving them away. Just like when we ordered you the big 5-inch notebooks this year, we put those in supplies because we gave them away to you, so they're no longer in our possession, which meant they lasted us less than a year. You can see that there's a unit price and a quantity. We are very strict on our quantities. So if you see there the ink and toner has 8, you are allowed to get 8. You can get 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but you cannot get 9 ink and toners. Now, what happens if the price of the ink and toner goes up after you've submitted your budget? I mean, it has been a few months now. Ink and toner may be a little bit more expensive. You can order 7 if you want. If there's enough funds there, you can order the 7 since the price has increased. You could order the 8 ink and toners if you want to reduce the quantities of, say, your color paper. As long as you don't go over your full allocation in that supply account line, that would be okay. So here's a requisition form for Sunshine Elementary School. Items for purchasing must be turned in on a requisition form to your school secretary. So you will need to ask your secretary for your site's requisition form. They should have this because they have to turn it in when they do regular orders. If you're using VIP, Staples, or Office Depot, you must log into that using one of the school account codes so that you get the discounted prices. We want to make sure that we have the prices, what we're going to pay for it, so that way there's not any extra money hanging out there that we haven't spent.
So Missy, this requisition purchase form, it should match that supply sheet that you just showed a few minutes ago. I mean, at least on quantity
Yes.
and
Again,
items.
the quantities matter. Prices, and the reason we don't so much rely on prices because prices change. And when we submit a budget in June, the price will be different by the time we go and order it in November. But quantity shouldn't. If you knew that you needed 13 reams of color paper, then 13 reams of color paper is what you should get. Now, what happens if I order all my items and I still have $200 left in my family engagement budget? After you have ordered everything, you can go back and do a second order and order more than the number. So if you had 13 reams of color paper and you ordered those 13, but you still have $200 left in your account, you could order another 13 reams of color paper. But that's after everything in your budget has been ordered. So once again, if it's not in the budget, you cannot order it.
But what if the teachers are having a literacy night and there's a really good sale on Scholastic books, and I could get a lot of books to give each parent a book that came? Can I order those?
If it's not in your budget, you'll need to talk to your principal because they'll need to have a conversation with your program manager. And what you can do is do an amendment to your budget and reallocate those funds. This can only be done during carry forward time. So you're getting into the next couple weeks or so where this could be done. So let's say that you put 2 laptops in your budget and now you've realized that you don't need the 2 laptops. Your desktop computer just broke. You need a new desktop computer. This can be done, but a reallocation amendment would need to be completed, and you'll have to work with your principal and program manager to do that.
So basically, I can't really change things easily. I need to stick with my plan.
You need to stick with your budget.
Okay.
It's not an easy fix, but it is a fix. I mean, there are times that things happen. You know, you may have worked with a principal and you got a new principal this year, and what y'all thought was going to be the plan for family engagement has changed, and you need to make some changes, and that's fine. It's doable. It just takes a little work, and your program managers will not mind helping or assisting with that process.
Okay, thanks.
All right, submitting an order. So if you use VIP and Office Depot, you'll need to print out a shopping cart. Again, use the login because we get really good discounted prices from VIP and Office Depot and Staples. So you'll need that. You'll need, so if you are using like Scholastic, like Debbie mentioned, then you'll need to get a quote from Scholastic and turn that in.
And not the just going to their website, clicking and getting online prices. It has to be an actual quote from the vendor.
Right. I can't go onto the website and click on a whole bunch of stuff and print out my shopping cart. That is not a quote. And I would say 99 out of 100 times, the quote is going to be less than the shopping cart because we do get discounts with a lot of these vendors. Once you have your shopping cart from VIP, Office Depot, or Staples, or a quote from any other vendor, you'll need to type that information up on the requisition form. And then you'll need to give those documents to your secretary. You can see there this information on how the what we need for different amounts. Anything under $2,499, we need 2 quotes, or we could do the cart printout since they're one of our vendors. Anything over that amount, it takes more quotes, and even higher amount, it could go into an RFP. But since y'all's budget is 3,500, we don't have to worry about that RFP. Also remember, this is really important. If you ordered colored paper and you ordered 14 reams of color paper using family engagement money, when that purchase order is delivered to the school, those 14 reams of color paper are stored in your family center. They are not put in the whole closet in the office where all colored paper goes. It is stored in your office. That is your color paper. It was purchased with the required set aside, and therefore those items are yours and must be kept in your room. Same thing with the copier paper. That copier paper is purchased with family engagement money. Those items should be in your room.
Let's move on and talk about the life of items to be purchased. So, as Missy told you all, it is important to make sure something's in your budget, fill out your requisition form, get your quote, give all of this to your school secretary. Well, if you look on our little chart here, you'll see where your requisition is submitted to your school secretary. That's what your school secretary does is she creates a purchase order in our LEAF system, and LEAFs is simply the financial system that the school system uses. After that purchase order has been completed, it is then up to your principal to apply his pen, and that just means his approval for what you're purchasing electronically. Once that happens, then your secretary sends a copy of purchase order and all of your supporting documentation to your program manager. They are going to look at all that information. They're going to check it against your school budget, make sure what you're ordering is what you said in the budget. They are going to send that on to their administrative support person here in the Title I office. That person checks over all of the documentation, making sure that things like the bid number are correct on it, the quantities are correct. Once that's been checked, then it goes to our Title I budget analyst, who again makes sure that the purchase is part of your budget, make sure that there's money in that account line to buy the purchases. After that, it goes to our director in Title I, who then puts her pen too on it, which is another approval. Once that approval is put on, then the purchase order is sent to the purchasing department, and purchasing moves that order on to the vendor. You can see there's a lot of steps, and at any one point in this process, if there is a problem found, then everything gets kicked back to the beginning to your school secretary to start over again.
Debbie, if that happens, about how long are you looking before that purchase order will get submitted back to the program manager?
It could be a week or two. Things don't happen quickly because at any point in this process, it can get stalled. If any one of these people happen to be sick or out for a reason, purchase order could stop on their desk for a few days. Or again, it comes back to your school secretary. They're busy taking care of parents, students, staff, your principal. It may be several days before they can make a correction. So this is not a quick process. Don't think you're going to order something today and you're going to get it next week. You really have to give yourself plenty of time with the process, which is why I suggest you start pulling together your requisition forms and your quotes now, because chances are our money will be released within the next month, and you're going to be able to place your orders, and your prices will not change that much in a month's time. And your secretary will love it when you can hand everything to them and they can move forward all at one time. Now let's talk about carry forward budgets. Carry forward budgets, as Missy mentioned earlier, there is no set aside for family engagement, but your principal can choose to put money in family engagement account lines. They're probably not going to do this unless you go in and have a conversation with them and ask them for very specific things that you feel your school needs that were not in the original Title I budget. Also, look at your needs, your inventory, what you need through September of next year, because you will not have another pot of money to order from between now and next September. So if you found at the beginning of the year you really like to have certain types of colored paper or envelopes or whatever it is, and you've used them all, well, you need to make sure you have them in a budget so you can buy them for the beginning of the school year. Or maybe your school wants to have a math workshop the beginning of next September because they did it this year and it was great, but you have no more supplies to give them for giveaways to do make and take it. Make sure that stuff gets put in a carry forward budget. So the first thing I would do is create a list of needs, locate my vendors and my prices, add account line numbers to each item, and tell your administrator what you want. Just going in and telling them you need more money is not going to work. You really need to have done your homework for them to give you some of this carry forward money for family engagement. Once you've talked to them, follow up with them and say, did you put this in the carry forward budget? Or ask your program manager, were these items put in the carry forward budget for family engagement? Because administrators get busy, they have a lot on their plate, and they may have the best intentions but forget to put something in the carry forward budget. So at this point, we've talked about your original Title I budget and your carry forward budget, and then how a purchase order is moved along and what you have to do for that. Now, if it's not in the budget, you can't order it. Say this to yourself over and over again because things come up all the time, as Missy alluded to. If it's not in the budget, you can't order it. So if you want something and it's not in your original budget, carry forward is where you can allocate that item to be able to purchase it. And again, your principals are going to get that dollar amount here in the next few weeks probably. They're going to be developing a budget in January. So think about what don't you have that you need. Okay, now we've talked about the regular budget. We've talked about carry forward. Because budgets come in a cycle, we'll be building the budget for 2020 that'll be due in June. So that means think ahead, think of the next year, create your list, get your prices. We understand prices change, but you need to have something to base what you're putting in your budget off of. You can't just put down, I need a printer and I'm gonna buy it for $90. That might not be reasonable. Maybe you really need the $300 printer. Or you put down you're buying a $1,000 printer, but you really needed the $90 printer. Put some thought into what you put down and look up prices. Discuss it with your administrator. Again, before you go home for the summer, ask them if it was in the budget. When you come back in August, follow up with your program manager, double check items that you were looking for in your budget. Sometimes in the summer, everyone's gone. Your principal can't remember or find the list of items you have, so they just put the exact same thing from the year before in, and suddenly you're stuck with things you just don't need. So please make sure you follow up. Again, best intentions might be there, but it doesn't necessarily happen. And so we've walked through, you have the 2019 budget, we'll have the carry forward budget, and then we'll also have the 2020 budget. All of these happen and overlap during the school year. And one last time, if it's not in the budget, you cannot order it. So it's vital what you need is listed in that budget. Let's talk a few reminders. By December 20th, which is your last day of work, you should have completed Capacity 3 for the second marking period. That's the face-to-face training that you're having with your staff. You should also have completed one primary and one secondary capacity. For Capacity 1, that's your testing, assessment, curriculum capacity. Capacity 2, that's where you're assisting parents in a content area with things they can do at home with their students. You're either giving them information about content or helping them with a make and take. Capacity 4, that is your transition, where you're transitioning to different grade levels, to new schools and programs, where you are partnering with other agencies. And then Capacity 6 is our capacity where these are things parents are asking for that you're providing. Maybe they're asking for information on bullying, on GEDs, on mindfulness, mental health care. Again, one primary, one secondary. The primary could be you put more than one of these together into one event. That's fine. That's just maximizing the time you have the parents at your school.
You don't have it on here, but the expo is coming up right after we come back from Christmas break. Um, what should schools have already have in place in order to use the expo to reach a capacity, and what capacity would it be used for?
Great question, Missy.
Thanks.
The expo is coming up. I've sent a couple of emails with flyers for the expo. Please make sure you've placed those flyers on your school's website. Whenever the expo happens, that is very easily fitting into Capacity 4 because you're looking to transition new students into your school. I will supply the sign-in sheets because there will be several central locations where parents are signing in. If you want to do a sign-in at your booth, that is entirely up to you. But one thing you have to do at your booth is ask for feedback. I would devise a very brief feedback form with maybe 3 to 5 questions that you could ask people when they come to your booth. I will supply you with the agenda. I'll supply you with the district's advertising, and then you'll have where you advertise it on your website. When it gets close, you might also want to do a call out to remind parents about the expo. For a secondary, you could have information in your booth related to curriculum or assessment. You could have make it and take it information in your booth for parents to take with them. You could have information on a variety of topics for capacity number 6, like behavior modifications, bullying, mindfulness, as we talked about before, that would be secondary. But this is primarily capacity number 4, transitioning.
Debbie, two follow-up questions for that. Do the family engagement facilitators need to be present during the expo, and are minutes required for this event?
Okay, good question. Parent facilitators do not have to be present at the expo because it is on a Saturday, and that would be an overtime situation for a number of you. You need to have that discussion with your school administrator because they're going to give you the guidance. Some of them want you to come, they're going to pay you to be there, and that is wonderful. Some of them are going to just assign some teachers to come in and work that day, and they and the assistant principal will work, and that's fine too. If you're not going to actually be there, or maybe you're going to come in for just a couple hours, make sure that everyone working your booth understands they need to get feedback. Also, I would take a picture because I think pictures are something that helps monitors see what's really going on and breaks their monotony of just looking at white forms and documents, and it tells your story. You do not have to have minutes for this event because it's not a meeting where someone is standing up and just talking, having your feedback and your pictures and all the documents I'm going to supply you with on sign-in and advertising should be sufficient. Does that take care of it, Missy?
I think so. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay. Also, please make sure you're reaching out to your mentor group and your program manager. You are not alone. We are building the we in family engagement, and you should feel supported every step of the way. Thank you for joining us.
With Debbie and Missy.
Bye.